partners, the Nature Conservancy, the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network, and the Yurok, Hoopa, and Karuk tribes that have allowed us to come and learn and burn with them.
Oh, back. Yeah, that's grand right there. So here's a definition, kind of a broad definition. Cultural fire, it's different to every tribe. So what is cultural fire? Cultural fire is the practice of using intentional fire in a culturally significant manner. It involves the use of fire for various purposes rooted in tradition, spirituality, and environmental management. Cultural fire is unique to each tribe and ecosystem. Cultural fire is intentional fire used for rejuvenation of the land, cultural plants, and medicines. The photo here to the right on the upper right hand corner is a burn that we just recently did in partnership with California State Parks. It was on the west side of Lake Tahoe at Burton Creek, where we did a small 21-acre broadcast burn, which was pretty low intensity, a lot of smoke, but it was really great because it was marking the beginning of Washoe's being allowed to burn on the land again with these agencies, and it was just really great experience for our guys, for our team, and building those relationships and networking.
So being allowed to burn on state parks was part of an MOU that the tribe has been working on for several years. And one of the things I'm learning being a new director is that oftentimes these things take a lot longer than I thought. Getting some of these agreements in place sometimes take 5 to 20 years before you actually are able to do work under an MOU or a stewardship agreement. So our past tribal historic preservation officer was working with state parks to get Washoes back on the landscape in the Tahoe Basin, basically. So we have this MOU with state parks, and part of the things we've asked for is, we want opportunities to burn so we can still maintain that stewardship role on our homelands. Even if it's not on land we own, it's in our traditional area, and it's great learning experience for our tribe, for our community, to have this opportunity to see what prescribed fire looks like and how it's done, and then also burning with other agencies, Indigenous communities, on what cultural fire looks like and how that's done, and just basically building our capacity so we can do more and build that trust between these partners so we have more opportunities to be land stewards in the future. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, we've been working on this for about 3 years. Education and outreach is something that we've really been focusing on because in the Tahoe Basin, with all the wildfires, a lot of people are scared of fire. They're scared of their $1 million homes burning down. They don't want to see any fire, and smoke is always a huge issue. We are working to do outreach with the public up there to basically let them know that, would you rather have 2 weeks of blackout smoke where you have to leave the area, or would you rather have a couple weeks of just a little bit of smoke where they're using good fire to maintain the forest? So getting people to understand that, when you see smoke, it's not always dangerous, that there's lots of prescribed fires going on in our area, and you don't need to freak out. It can be done in a safe way. Sure, there are times when prescribed fire gets out of hand, but that's why we're starting really slowly. We want to be sure that we have all the information we need to do this in a safe, careful way. So on the bottom is an episode from the UNR podcast, Living with Fire. Helen Fillmore is a Washoe Tribal member and used to be on Tribal Council, and she kind of helped start this program because she used to be a hot shot and is real passionate about fire. So it's called a necessary disturbance, and some people have said that, fire isn't a disturbance, but it is. But it is necessary. This was something that was part of our way of life. It's always been happening, and we need to still do it because we can see that forests are no longer healthy. So this was a podcast. Living with Fire is basically an extension group that focuses just on prescribed fire and getting the word out about how prescribed fire is okay and nothing you need to be scared of. So we did the podcast, and then there was also a couple articles. The Washoe Tribe scientists discuss using traditional knowledge to mitigate wildfire risk and restore Meeks Meadow. So this was part of a stewardship agreement with United States Forest Service Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit. They manage most of the forestry lands in Lake Tahoe. It took 20 years to get that stewardship agreement in place. So around 97, people were talking about how do we get Washoes back into the Tahoe Basin. MOU was signed, nothing happened under the MOU. Another 20 years later, a larger, more robust document, the stewardship agreement, was signed. And this was really exciting for the Washoe Tribe because this was the first of its kind in our area for a government agency to allow Washoe tribal members to do traditional land management on Forest Service lands. So it was signed in 2019, and we are still trying to thin that meadow. Lots of red tape, collaboration, coordination issues, COVID, plus forest fires. Forest fires pull away all the workforce. When, say, we have something scheduled or planned, it's like, we got to go out on a fire. We can't be here. We'll have to reschedule. So the issue with Meeks Meadow is it was a traditional Washoe summer home. It's 300 acres, and due to cattle grazing and timber cruising, it has been encroached by lodgepole pine. So our goal is to mechanically thin 300 acres and then to go back and do a culturally guided, prescribed, or broadcast burn in there, and go back and do that every 2 years, followed by vegetation management, where we see if the fires we're doing are helping the plants we want to see come back. So below is a picture of blue camas. That's a cultural plant for the Washoe Tribe. It's a food source for a lot of indigenous tribes, I think. And then to the right, I'll let Craig speak to this, but some pile burns. We've had a couple opportunities to burn in Lake Tahoe now, and this is something we've been asking for like 3 years, but only now as we keep repeating ourselves saying, hey, we want to have more stewardship opportunities in the Tahoe Basin. We want to get familiar with prescribed fire. Is there a way we can work with you guys? And then in turn, you help us burn our land, we'll help you burn your land, and have it be a true collaboration.
Thank you. So as for the photos on the right-hand side, the upper photo is a coworker of mine. His name is Kevin Rogers. He's kind of really been helping us with his hotshot experience to be able to establish this burn program. He's not of indigenous descent, but he's a really good guy, has a lot of knowledge. So on this upper photo, we're burning with Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit and some pile burns, and they had us on the holding team, kind of wetting everything down, making sure that none of the green timber or anything kind of torches off. And on the lower right-hand side is a broadcast burn that we did with the Hoopa and Karuk up in Northern California, which was a really good learning experience, really good to see how they do things. They've been really critical in trying to help us to establish our program, and a big shout out to them. Next slide, please. So fire resiliency and mitigation. WEPD has started a cultural burn program in 2021. So as you can see, it's fairly new. Within the past 2 years, we just recently barely got this thing started, and it's taken a long time, but we're finally making some good headway on it, and it's been really fun. That's all I can really say about it. From my own experience, it's been fun. WEPD has joined the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network. So with the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network, it's made up of a bunch of tribes across the United States, all with the intention of bringing fire back to the landscape. And it's been really an honor to go around with these tribes and be welcomed into their homelands and burn, and to really see how they do things and what their relationship with fire is and their traditions. So far we burned in Northern California. We also burned down in Texas with the Alabama ʔitdéʔ tribe, and next week we're actually going to be going to go burn in New Mexico. So it's been really fun, really great bunch of people, real heavy focus on legislation about fire, cultural fire, how to use it, and really just helping each other, networking, supporting each other in our goals and objectives for the future. WEPD is applying for additional funds for restoration work. My director probably has more information on that as they're the behind the scenes people that keep the money flowing. Collaborating with other agencies on fuel reduction, mitigation, and training. This has really been great. As for us, we went with our partnership with the BLM. We've been able to foster our training programs and be able to get our red cards and our calls that we need to be out on these incidents and be able to get our Washoe presence established in the homelands again. As for the photos, I'll speak a little bit on that. On the left top corner, that is a smoke plume from the Tamarack fire. That fire actually triggered one of our reservations being evacuated for a good, probably about 10 days, I think, before they got it got it safe for people to come back home. And on the bottom left-hand side, that's a group of us, Indigenous Peoples Burning Network folks, while we were up in Northern California. A lot of great individuals, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of motivation there, great energy. As for the photos on the right, on the top right-hand corner, those are pinyon pine seeds that we germinated, and then eventually we planted them into these potting cells on the lower right-hand side. They started turning into little seedlings that we eventually want to use to restore the burned areas in our homelands.
So the pinyon pine picture is up here to show that, fire resiliency isn't just about prescribed fire or cultural fire. It's about how do we protect our homelands and our cultural resources. So we started a resilience garden. We got 1,000 pinyon pine donated from UNR as part of someone's research. We planted those out in the Pine Nut Hills, which have been burned over many times, as you saw from the previous maps. And those seedlings aren't much bigger than that 2 years later. They're very slow growing. No other agencies grow them because they're difficult to grow. They have a very long taproot, which makes them difficult to plant out. But this is our number one cultural resource, along with Lahan cutthroat trout, and we're losing both at a rapid manner due to climate change. So we need to start doing something ourselves. So I won't ever see these trees make a seed in my lifetime, but hopefully, our children and our children's children will see. It's 30 to 50 years before pinyon makes its first good seed set, maybe 60 years before it has a full cone crop. So maybe I see Cliff looking at me questioning. I might still be alive. Thank you, Cliff. But working on restoring our homelands with plants that are important to us. And then if we're going to do all this work, how do we protect those? So some of the other conversations we're having, and this is where collaboration with other agencies comes in and is so important. Working with them, I don't know if anybody knows or is familiar with pods, pre-operational delineation lines, but basically making a fire line before a fire happens. So you can plan ahead, you can do the NEPA CEQA, you can protect cultural resources, you don't bulldoze over archaeological sites because you're in an emergency situation. So it's like, let's plan ahead, let's plan way ahead and put these fire lines in, do the work we need to do ahead of time so we're not in such a dangerous situation in the future. And again, collaborating with other agencies, like UNR donated the pine nut seeds, and that kind of jumped off our resilience garden. Working with state parks so we can burn on their land and gain experience. Working with the Forest Service and LTBMU to do Meeks Meadow. These are all partnerships we need, and it's hard because, as a sovereign nation, we want to be able to do a lot of things on our own independently, but we still need to ask a lot of permissions. And the one thing that's still really controlled by the BIA on tribal lands is fire. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with your own sovereignty, but fire, they still have a large say in. So we're still looking into how do we exercise our sovereignty and, not have to ask permission to maintain our lands and steward our own homelands. Like, why are we asking government agency for permission, which actually takes much longer than if we were to just do it ourselves? Waiting for the permission, waiting to hear back from somebody. So again, still working with other agencies is necessary, but we're really trying to learn as much as we can so we have all the information we need to lead this program ourselves and help other tribes. Craig was saying there's other tribes in the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network. I think it's only like 6 or 7, but I think people are joining quickly with some of the funds that are out there and available now. Some of the state laws or legislative bills that have been passed allowing for more cultural fire. more permissions for Indigenous people to use their traditional stewardship practices.
Yeah, so fire restoration, Cutter, Preacher, Number, Tamarack, these are all fires that have happened in our homelands recently. So the Washoe Tribe ancestral lands are devastated by wildfire every year with at least one, if not two, wildfires. Due to climate change, drought, forest management practices, and loss of habitat, we are losing our cultural resources such as pinyon pine, mule deer, pinyon jays, and cultural and medicinal plants. One of WEPD's main focus moving forward is conservation on pinyon pine and the Pinette Range.
That reminds me of something else. Pinyon jays. So there's no silviculture plan for pinyon pine. We're working with a group, again, of researchers from several universities and UNR on putting together a pinyon pine stewardship group on how we can come up with a silviculture plan, have it include TEK, and have it be acknowledged that pinyon pine and junipers aren't just forest fire fuels. You know, they're taking out PJ forests for sage grouse habitat. They're taking it out for fuels reduction. This is no longer acceptable, and this can't happen anymore because we're losing our cultural resource and we're losing our culture and our identity as part of that. So when I see pinyon pine on here, one thing we've talked about is, you know, we've been asking the BLM to take pinyon pine off their Christmas tree cutting list, and probably been waiting 6 to 7 months to have that conversation. Things keep coming up. We keep getting put on the back burner. So it's like, you know what? Well, maybe we just need to put pinyon jays on the endangered species list. If you're not going to listen to the tribe and what we want, maybe these two birds can compete, the sage grouse and the pinyon jays, because pinyon jays their populations have greatly reduced over the past years. They're losing their habitat as well, along with Indigenous people. So it's been kind of a process where you learn one thing and it's like, this isn't working. What else can we do to have our voices be heard and to protect our homeland? So if we need to start working with pinyon jays and conservation of birds, we're going to do it. These pinyon pines here, so these are a year old. You can see they're not very much bigger. And the picture below is the pinyon pine nut hills where we did the planting. They have little cornstarch cages around them to protect them from the wild horses that will eat them. We've also done some drill seeding out there as part of our BIA bear plans.
Next slide. So Meeks Meadow, Mila Wata in our language, located in Meeks Bay, California, and is located on the west side of Lake Tahoe. The Washoe Tribe, along with the Forest Service, are planning to restore the meadow and eventually bring back cultural fire in this area. A multi-phase treatment process has been adapted to segment the meadow and bring it to a state that can be burned safely and effectively. The Washoe Tribe Environmental Department has held numerous volunteer events to help with hand thinning with the public and partner agencies. This project marks the beginning of Washoe people being allowed to burn on federal lands that were once under Washoe stewardship. So as you can see the photo on the top right-hand side, that area was once actually a meadow. So as you can see, it's pretty inundated, really a lot of lodgepole encroachment. So that's the 300-acre unit that we're talking about when we're talking about thinning it and eventually getting it to a point that we can be able to bring fire back to the landscape. And the picture below that is actually one of our volunteer events that we held where we had volunteers come out with hand saws and they were able to cut some of the smaller lodge poles down, and we were kind of able to use the lop and scatter technique to try to disperse some of those fuels. But it's been really great trying to get the outreach out there, get people involved, get the people that live in the area involved as well, and try to get them on board and get their support. Next slide, please.
So again, you know, we start talking about prescribed fire and one thing leads to another. So we've started this resilience garden, our cultural native plant nursery, so we can grow our own pinyon pine. So in the picture there, those are pinyon pines that we put in cells to start, and below is UNR researcher Alexandra Urza from Rocky Mountain Research Station. They're the ones that donated the pinyon pine. You can see how she's taking it out, how long that taproot is, and how difficult that is going to be to plant without breaking or damaging that taproot. So again, we felt the need for restoration plans. Pinyon pine, Pinus monophila, is not available as a resource plant, and there is great need to start preserving this cultural resource now. Our goals are growing native and culturally significant plants for restoration projects in the Carson Valley and Tahoe Basin. After we restore our pine nut hills, we hope to be able to share or trade some of these plants with other agencies, because we want to see pinyon pine everywhere, not just on our homelands that we own. So focus on pinyon pine conservation and wildlife habitat in the pine nut range, and education and outreach for the community. Next slide, please.
So here's just some of our outreach stuff that we've been using in our tribe. On the left-hand side is a wildfire training opportunity that we've been using to try to outreach to people in our community, trying to get people trained up and get their qualifications up so that they can be more involved in these incidents, or not these incidents, but these actual prescribed fires and these opportunities to be able to get our presence out there on the land. So it's been pretty tough trying to get people interested in it, because as people know, firefighting is kind of a lot of work. It is pretty arduous. So I mean, we're trying to speak to the younger crowd, mainly the youth, try to get them involved and try to get them interested in this stuff. On the right hand side is our monthly quarterly newsletter that we use, and we send it out to all the members on our communities and our reservations. We send it out. It's kind of to give them an update on what we're doing, where we're going, what progress has been done, our challenges, our successes, just sharing all these things with them to keep everybody updated, keep everybody interested, and hopefully, get our community support behind us. And it's just a really great way to be able to keep that outreach going and keep our community members involved and informed. Next slide, please.
So in addition to wildfire, we also talk about mitigation. So Tahoe Forest Products Sawmill on Washoe Tribal lands. The Washoe Tribe recently collaborated with Tahoe Forest Products to put a biomass facility on Washoe Tribal lands because there isn't one in our area. There was one in Loyalton, but it closed down, but now it's open again. So Loyalton is about 2 hours away. For those of you that don't know, hauling biomass is very expensive. An estimated 7,000 tons of biomass are predicted to come out of Meeks Meadow, that 300-acre meadow. We want to bring that wood to Washoe Tribal lands to use it for our Elders Wood program. We want to use it to build houses. The only rule as part of that is that we can't sell the wood, but we can share it with other communities. We can give it away. We can give it to our community for our Elders Wood program. So the sawmill has been great because with all those fires, there's biomass everywhere. There's just fuel on the ground waiting to go up. And there's not enough people capacity to remove all those logs in a safe way before, there's another potentially devastating fire. So this has been a way for the Washoe Tribe to help remove some of that biomass off the landscape and process it in a safe way so it's not just being left there and creating another dangerous situation. This is through our Washoe Development Corporation, which is our economic development branch. Again, the mill is owned by Tahoe Forest Products, but it's on Washoe Tribal lands. And again, coming back to collaborations, it's really necessary for us to have this type of agreement because we also wrote in there, Washoe Tribal preference for hiring, opportunities for Washoe Tribal members to be employed here. And then them working with us on, can we get some of this timber for free once it's processed? Next slide, please.
So here are some of the accomplishments since 2021 that our department has had. So 4 WEPD employees have completed basic 32 fire training. 2 WEPD employees received their red cards. We have pile burned with Tahoe Fire and Fuels teams on the Washoe Tribal Incline Village parcel. WEPD has attended multiple TREX events and are working to bring TREX to Tahoe fall 2024. The first burn, 2022, a patch of willows for basket making, was our first burn in approximately 80 years. Interviewing elders about their experience with fire, building a traditional ecological knowledge base. Draft best management practices working on healthy country plan with Indigenous Peoples Burning Network and the Nature Conservancy. We've been having culturally guided prescribed burn scheduled for 2024 for the 300-acre Meeks Meadow, Tahoma, California. Good. Next slide, please. So this is the end of our presentation, Uma Angawe, which means thank you in our language. And hopefully you guys got something out of this, and we appreciate your time and thank you for having us.
Questions? Cliff, any questions?
Oh, hi. Hi, my name is Aya. Thank you for your presentation. I have a house in South Lake Tahoe. It's not $1 million. It's probably, worth negative 60,000, but because of asbestos. But anyways, I have two questions. What are some volunteer opportunities for me and my son? And secondly, when you go down the hill towards Placerville on the I-50, it looks clear cut. And I'm not sure what the plan is, and I was wondering if you knew. Thank you.
I don't know what it is, but was that in the burned area after the Caldor fire? Sierra at Tahoe? Do you know what they did? So that's where the logs for the sawmill are coming from. So I think all people now are trying to get out the burned wood, the hazard trees, and then have it processed. So it's probably, I think they're doing a piecemeal plan to take out portions that are maybe more dangerous, closer to homes, closer to roadways, to get some of that hazard wood out of there. I think they are, but it could be a while because I think they still have to go through NEPA CEQA to do the planting. Yes, and volunteer opportunities, we have had a bunch. We have released the RFP for proposals to get the meadow thinned. So that has kind of been our focus this year. We've kind of held off on opportunities, but we've had Girl Scouts up there before. We can sign up for our mailing list and get our newsletters. And we also have a volunteer list that we've started because we do get a lot of requests. Like if you want to come and cut willows to pile for our cultural burn, if you want to cut down some of these baby lodgepole pines, like please, capacity is an issue across the forest. So the more help we can get, that would be appreciated. I can give you my card and or your email address. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tom Gusty with the Washoe Tribe. With your cleaning of the pinyon trees and the removals and stuff, is that on your guys' land or is it off on the Forest Service land?
The cleaning of the pinyon trees is on pine allotment land, but our pinyon pine stewardship is with Bridgeport Paiute in the Masonic Mountains. So that's where we're looking at some experimental plots for planting, doing some soil testing, and then going to do some replanting there as well.
With that, did you have to get any type of waiver or anything with Masonic for the volunteers?
Yes, we're working with the Bridgeport TIPO, and they got approval from their council to do the work. So, and then the researchers are in charge of the environmental clearances.
Okay, last question. With the monitoring of the health of the vegetation, are you going to be using drones or anything for that?
Can we? Craig just went to drone training. I'll let him answer that. Oh.
Yeah, we do actually plan on using drones for vegetation monitoring, density, things such like that. Surveying, mapping. And you were at the training with me, so you see the the significance that drones can play in these environmental situations.
We had a question come in in the chat from Louisa McCovey. Have you found a significant, reliable source of funding for the pre-treatment or fuels reduction part of cultural burning?
No. The National Forest Foundation has been very supportive for our resilience garden. So we may lean on them again in the future. The Nature Conservancy, although we don't have a grant with them, I think that's something that we could explore because they're in conjunction with the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network. The California Tahoe Conservancy, which was on the first slide, they've been great funders, and that's just local for the Tahoe Basin, but they've provided funding for the Washoe Tribe to be working on Meeks Meadow, to do the research, to hire contractors, to do the NEPA CEQA. they have provided another grant to us that is just called the Washoe Capacity Grant that has a lot of leniency for us to explore our history with cultural fire, to have experience with other agencies on cultural fire. They're very supportive of the tribe, and we'll probably lean on them again as well.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Nick Rajan with the Intertribal Agriculture Council. Just want to make a comment that there might be ways of getting fire back without just the BIA hurdles through the ARMP, Agriculture Resource Management Planning, a little bit different, but in the same realm of the Integrated Resource Management Planning. So if something like that comes about and it's a part of the agroforestry or it's a part of like traditional foods, something like that, that might be a way to bypass some of those hardships that we had to face on tribal land. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And I would like to state that our first cultural burn is on agricultural land because it's easier. Bottom line.
And we just have time for one final question.
What about Cliff?
Sorry, one quick comment and a question. The comment is in regards to what you said earlier about Washoe being the best basket makers. I think that's the Pomo. I'm just kidding.
Conference over.
I'm just messing around. But
I know.
You said that you worked with the Karuk tribe as well as the Hoopa. Have you worked with the Yurok tribe as well in burning?
Yeah, and in this picture here, that's Margot Robbins, who I think does the cultural fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so her and Bob Bale from the Nature Conservancy, and then our emergency operations manager, and Craig and another staff member who left us to go to Cal Poly Humboldt for forestry, so we can come back and take my job someday. But yeah, Margot has visited our reservation territory a couple times and has been very supportive with us doing our healthy country planning. Again, you know, the healthy country planning was an Aboriginal plan that they went down and learned from, and then the Karuk and Yurok adopted it, and maybe even the Hoopa as like a tri-tribe plan because they're very close. So we're basically learning from them on what it will look like for us, because this is an opportunity for us to put cultural fire into those integrated resource management plans where it wasn't there before. And those plans are kind of overlorded by the BIA or other agencies. So this is like a plan for the people by the people.
Thank you. I think the work you're doing is amazing. My name is Dakota Perez. I'm from the Yurok tribe, but I'm representing Pinole Pomo Nation. Thank you for
Awesome,
the
thank
presentation you put on and all the work you're doing.
Thank you. Cliff? We have really been, Cliff asked why or how do we get so much community engagement? And it's been tough. Like Craig says, we have flyers and we only get a couple bites, but doing education and outreach has been a huge focus for us this year. Again, if people don't know what our plans or goals are, there's no way for them to help us, or there's no way for them to even acknowledge and respect it. You know, it's like, oh, I've never heard of this before. Like, why am I only just now hearing about it? And it's like, oh, we've been doing this for 3 years and we've been asking for attention. You know, so by speaking at conferences, by doing interviews that none of us want to do, getting the word out there basically about prescribed fire, cultural fire, and what our goals are. And then, you know, we have individuals who reach out and say, I'd like to volunteer. So we open it up more to, I mean, not cultural fire, but like we allow general public people to come and be a part of our projects. We're not just focused on the Washoe community, but again, educating the Washoe community, letting them know that you don't need to have a science degree to work in the environmental field. You don't need to have any degree to be a steward of your homelands, and to kind of reframe that to where it's like, this isn't just a job, like this has real meaning. And I think a lot of people who struggle with maybe drug or alcohol issues, I've heard that like working for your community fills those same receptors as some of the addiction things. So it's like, if you can come work for your community, it's healing for the people, it's healing for the land, and then just have people kind of think of it in that way as not just a job or fire, but it's more of a holistic community, healthy country view.
Hi, I was told there's actually like 5 minutes still, so I'm gonna do a question. I guess one from my benefit, this is a very new topic for me, and I don't think I fully understood the like the sawmill piece, or like, so I know that you're biomass processing facility, what did you say that then it's like processed and used to build housing? And part 2 of that question is also, I would love to know more about that agreement you have with Tahoe Forest Products Sawmill, because I think you had mentioned that there was a caveat of like you cannot sell the biomass, but you can give it to the community. And I was just curious what that agreement and process look like.
So those are kind of 2 separate things. The biomass that comes out of Meeks Meadow, we're grant funded. So we have a grant to remove that biomass, so we can't sell that biomass. The biomass that goes to Tahoe Forest Products, it's like a private company just on Washoe Tribal lands. So they can do anything they want with it. But in their agreement, and again, this is kind of a separate arm of the Washoe Tribe, so it's not under environmental, it's under Washoe Development Corporation. And I can give you their contact information if you like. Wendy will have many more answers. But basically writing into the agreement that there will be tribal preference, that we will be able to use some of the wood for, you know, our needs.
I just have to come in with another comment from the chat, and please remember that I am just the messenger here. This comes from Debbie Rasmussen and says, "Maidu are the best basket makers."
We'll see. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry for moving us quicker. Usually I'm late. So never in my life been early. Is question? No more.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.